Throughout human history, few events have left as devastating a mark as the Black Death. This catastrophic pandemic, which swept across Europe, Asia, and parts of Africa in the 14th century, resulted in the death of an estimated 75 to 200 million people. The sheer scale of the tragedy and the rapid spread of the disease left an indelible scar on societies, economies, and cultures. The Black Death is often cited as one of the worst disasters humanity has ever faced, not just for the staggering loss of life, but also for the profound social, political, and economic upheavals. Despite the massive historical documentation surrounding the pandemic, the true nature of the Black Death remains, in many ways, a mystery. What exactly caused it? How did it spread so quickly? Was it truly the bubonic plague, as most historians have claimed for centuries, or something else entirely? These questions still intrigue scholars and researchers today, as new discoveries challenge long-held beliefs about the origins and impact of the Black Death. Let's explore the mystery of the Black Death, tracing its origins, the theories surrounding its cause, its deadly impact on human civilization, and how it forever changed the course of history. The origins of the Black Death. The Black Death is believed to have originated in the remote steppes of Central Asia, a region of harsh climates and nomadic tribes. In the early 14th century, these lands were home to the Mongol Empire, a vast territory that stretched from Eastern Europe to East Asia. The Pax Mongolica, or Mongol Peace, allowed unprecedented trade along the Silk Road, bringing Europe, the Middle East, and Asia together. However, this global interconnectedness also created the perfect conditions for the spread of disease. The first recorded signs of a pandemic occurred around 1338 to 1339, when an outbreak of what is likely the Black Death was recorded near Lake Issyk-Kul in present-day Kyrgyzstan. The disease spread rapidly along trade routes, carried by Mongol merchants, travelers, and even warriors. By the 1340s, the disease had reached the bustling trading cities of the Black Sea, where it was poised to move further west. In 1347, the Black Death entered Europe via the ports of Sicily and Italy, brought by Genoese merchants fleeing an outbreak in the Crimean Peninsula. From there, it spread rapidly across the continent, carried by ships, caravans, and human movements, reaching every corner of Europe within a few years. Many historians believe that the disease was spread primarily by fleas that lived on black rats, which were common on ships and in human settlements. These fleas carried the bacterium Yersinia pestis, which causes bubonic plague. When infected fleas bit people, the disease entered their bloodstream, leading to severe and often fatal symptoms. However, as we will explore later, recent research has challenged this long-held assumption, suggesting that other factors may have influenced the pandemic's rapid spread. The Black Death outbreak was not just a European phenomenon. It also devastated parts of the Middle East, North Africa, and Asia, affecting major cities such as Cairo, Damascus, and Baghdad. By the time the pandemic hit in the early 1350s, it had killed millions, with some estimates suggesting as much as 60% of Europe's population. Symptoms and medical understanding of the Black Death. In the 14th century, medical knowledge was limited, and the true nature of the Black Death remained a mystery. The disease struck suddenly and violently, and its symptoms were terrifying to those who witnessed it. The most common form of the disease, known as bubonic plague, causes painful swellings called lymph nodes to appear on the victim's body, especially in the lymph nodes in the armpits, groin, and neck. These nodes can grow to the size of an apple and often fill with pus and blood. Fever, chills, headaches, and exhaustion follow, and death usually occurs within 3 to 7 days of the first symptoms. While bubonic plague is the most common, other forms of the disease are even more deadly. Septicemic plague, which occurs when the bacteria enter the bloodstream directly, causes the victim to bleed from the skin and other organs. This disease is almost always fatal. Pneumonic plague, another deadly form, infects the lungs and can be spread from person to person through respiratory droplets, making it highly contagious. Unlike bubonic plague, which relies on fleas as a vector, pneumonic plague can spread rapidly through human contact, making it especially dangerous in crowded cities. Doctors at the time had no understanding of bacteria or viruses. Medieval medical practices were based largely on the ancient Greek theory of humors, which posited that the body was made up of four fluids: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, and that illness was caused by an imbalance of these humors. Physicians attempted to treat the Black Death with methods such as bloodletting, lancing the buboes, or prescribing herbal remedies, none of which were effective. Many believed the disease was a punishment from God for humanity's sins, leading to widespread religious fervor and acts of penitence, such as the flagellant movement, where groups of people would publicly whip themselves in an attempt to atone for their sins and appease divine wrath. Despite their best efforts, medieval doctors could do little to stop the relentless march of the disease. Without an understanding of germs or infection control, their methods often contributed to the spread of the plague. For instance, some doctors advised people to flee the cities, not realizing that by doing so, they carried the disease with them to other regions. The mystery of the Black Death's cause persisted for centuries, and it wasn't until the late 19th century, when the bacterium Yersinia pestis was identified, that scientists began to understand the true nature of the disease. However, recent research has suggested that the story may be more complicated than previously thought. New theories and recent discoveries. For centuries, the Black Death was almost universally attributed to the bubonic plague caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis. The classic explanation involved fleas that fed on infected rats and then transmitted the bacteria to humans. This model of transmission seemed to explain how the disease spread so rapidly across Europe, as rats were common in cities and ports. However, new research has begun to challenge the traditional narrative. Some scholars argue that the speed and scale of the Black Death's spread cannot be fully explained by the flea-rat-human transmission model. The bubonic plague typically takes longer to incubate, and its spread is generally slower than what historical accounts of the Black Death describe. Moreover, the climatic conditions in many parts of northern Europe during the 14th century would have been inhospitable to the black rat, raising questions about how the disease spread so quickly in those regions. One alternative theory is that the Black Death may have been a viral hemorrhagic fever, similar to Ebola, which could have spread through respiratory droplets or bodily fluids. This would explain the rapid transmission of the disease and its devastating effects. Another possibility is that the Black Death involved multiple diseases acting in tandem, with the bubonic plague being just one component of a larger, more complex epidemic. Some researchers have even suggested that anthrax or other zoonotic diseases may have played a role in the pandemic. DNA analysis of human remains from plague pits has provided some tantalizing clues. In 2011, a team of scientists in Germany and Canada sequenced the genome of Yersinia pestis from the teeth of Black Death victims buried in London. Their findings confirmed that the bacterium was present during the 14th century outbreak, supporting the traditional bubonic plague theory. However, the researchers also noted that the strain of Yersinia pestis responsible for the Black Death is no longer circulating in modern populations, raising questions about why the disease was so much more deadly in the past than it is today. Environmental and social factors likely played a significant role in the Black Death's spread. The 14th century was a time of great upheaval, marked by famine, war, and climate change. The onset of the Little Ice Age, a period of global cooling, led to crop failures and widespread malnutrition across Europe, weakening the population and making people more susceptible to disease. The Hundred Years' War between England and France created additional hardships, displacing populations and spreading the disease across borders. Urbanization and overcrowded living conditions in medieval cities created the perfect breeding ground for the Black Death. Ultimately, the true cause of the Black Death remains a mystery, and ongoing research continues to shed new light on this devastating event. While Yersinia pestis is still considered the primary culprit, the pandemic's rapid spread and high mortality rate suggest that other factors, including social, environmental, and possibly even viral components, may have played a role. The social and economic impact of the Black Death. The Black Death was not just a biological disaster. It was a social, political, and economic earthquake that reshaped Europe and much of the world. In the wake of the pandemic, societies were forced to reckon with staggering losses, and the consequences were far-reaching. One of the most immediate effects of the Black Death was a massive reduction in the population. In some areas, as much as 60% of the population died, leaving entire villages deserted. The labor shortage that followed had profound economic consequences. With fewer people to work the land, wages for laborers increased dramatically, giving peasants and serfs unprecedented bargaining power. This shift in the balance of power between landowners and workers contributed to the eventual decline of feudalism in Europe. At the same time, the scarcity of labor led to innovations in agriculture and industry. Landowners began to invest in more efficient farming techniques, while cities saw a rise in guilds and craftsmen who specialized in producing goods for a recovering economy. The pandemic also spurred advancements in medicine and public health as societies sought ways to prevent future outbreaks. The psychological impact of the Black Death was equally profound. The sheer scale of the death and suffering led many to question long-held beliefs about religion, fate, and the nature of existence. The Catholic Church, which had been the dominant institution in medieval Europe, struggled to maintain its authority in the face of widespread disillusionment. Many people believed that the plague was a punishment from God, and as a result, religious extremism and superstition flourished. Some turned to flagellants, who performed public acts of penance, while others targeted religious minorities, such as Jews, in a misguided attempt to find a scapegoat for the disaster. Art and literature also reflected the profound impact of the Black Death. Medieval depictions of death, such as the macabre, danse macabre, dance of death, became common, illustrating the omnipresence of mortality. The trauma of the pandemic left an indelible mark on the cultural consciousness of Europe, shaping attitudes toward death, suffering, and the fragility of life. Politically, the Black Death weakened the feudal system, and as populations struggled to rebuild, new power dynamics emerged. In many cases, monarchies consolidated power, while the nobility and clergy saw their influence wane. The economic and social shifts set the stage for the Renaissance, a period of cultural and intellectual rebirth that would transform Europe in the centuries to come. The Black Death remains one of the most enigmatic and devastating events in human history. While much is known about the pandemic's effects, the true cause and nature of the disease remain subjects of debate and ongoing research. Whether it was solely the bubonic plague or a combination of diseases, the Black Death profoundly reshaped the world, leaving behind a legacy of social, economic, and cultural transformation. The mystery of the Black Death serves as a reminder of the fragility of human civilization in the face of global pandemics. Even today, as the world grapples with modern pandemics like COVID-19, we can see echoes of the same fears, uncertainties, and challenges that confronted medieval society. However, the resilience of humanity in the wake of the Black Death also offers hope that even in the darkest times, societies can rebuild and emerge stronger. As scientists continue to explore the mysteries of the past, the story of the Black Death will remain a haunting reminder of the power of disease and the complex interplay between humans and the natural world.